Hey guys, tonight we journey into the lives of people history tried very hard to forget. You won't find them in your textbooks, no marble statues, no fancy biographies, just ash scattered in the wind and echoes beneath centuries of dust. You're standing in a Bronze Age village, if you can call it that. Really, it's a collection of huts held together by reeds, wishful thinking and animal dung. The smell is a mix of smoke, wet thatch, and something definitely dead nearby. Probably a goat. You don't know. You've never known anything else. You don't have a name anyone will record. Your ancestors, if they survived long enough to have any, aren't kings or prophets. They were probably just like you, hungry, sore and sick of the gods not returning their calls. You've woken up in the dirt literally for the 10th time this month. Your bed is a mat so thin it might as well be a polite suggestion to the cold ground beneath. The fire has gone out again, and your mother, who's maybe 25 but looks 60, is yelling at your brother for sneezing near the millet. It's all you have for the week, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere cozy, drop your location and local time down below. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're about 5 years old, but you already carry water jars taller than your torso. You're strong out of necessity. If you don't bring water, no one drinks. And yes, the well is a half-mile away, over rocks and probably near wolves. Again, your hands are calloused, not rough calloused. They cracked during last winter's frost and never quite healed. You try not to think about the pain anymore, the way one of your fingernails fell off after a nasty splinter from splitting wood. Your uncle laughed. He said that means you're a real worker now. What a treat you eat millet gruel, maybe a bit of wild onion, and once you had honey. You still think about that day. It tasted like magic. Like what the elders say, the afterlife might taste like if you're lucky. You don't go to school. There's no school. You learn from watching copying, getting scolded. Your father speaks of stories passed from elder to elder, and you've learned them by heart. Myths of gods who turned into eagles, spirits in the river, a great flood that washed away the lazy, but you're mostly concerned with keeping your fingers out of the cooking fire. There's talk in the village of another settlement over the ridge. They've got bronze, real bronze, not copper. You hear the men mutter about it while sharpening sticks. Your brother says there will be a raid soon. You don't understand what that means fully, but your mother tells you to keep the youngest hidden in the grain bin, just in case historians still argue whether early Bronze Age communities cooperated more than they fought. But right now, standing barefoot in a smoky hut, cooperation feels a bit like a luxury you can't afford. The nights are the worst, cold black silent, except for the dogs barking at nothing and the occasional screams from the woods. Wolves, you tell yourself. Always wolves. One night a fire breaks out in one of the homes. Thatched roofs and open flames are a terrible combo. The blaze moves fast. You try to help by throwing water, precious water, on the flames, but it's no use. By morning 2 huts are gone, and the family inside didn't get out in time. There's no funeral, no tombstones, just a charred patch and some whispers. No one talks about them after a few days. It's like they never existed. You're reminded again, life is cheap here, memory even cheaper. Later that week, a travelling trader arrives. He's got tin beads, even a dried fish. Everyone rushes him like he's a rock star. Your village offers hides a few blades, and one of the older girls, you're told she's going to marry into another tribe for an alliance. She's 12, she's crying. The adults say it's a good deal. You say nothing. It rains for 3 days straight. The walls of your hut begin to cave in. You plug holes with grass and pray the roof doesn't collapse. It does. On your brother's leg, he limps for the rest of his short life. The only healer in the area is a half-blind woman who claims to talk to spirits. She rubs your brother's wounds with crushed herbs and chants in a language only she remembers. It doesn't help much, but hey, it smells better than the usual mud. A week later he dies of infection. There's no burial, just a shallow pit near the edge of the clearing. A few stones mark the spot. You visit once, then stop. There's always more work. Your sister marries young. You suspect she didn't want to. The man's old, with black teeth and bad breath. But he has a better hut than your family, so she goes, you never see her again. People vanish like smoke. Still, you grow older, stronger. Your back begins to ache early, but that's normal. Everyone's back hurts. A neighbour dies of a snake bite. Another chokes on a fishbone. Your life becomes a list of names disappearing one by one. The seasons blur. Harvest, hunger, rain, fire, repeat. One day a new family arrives. They speak a dialect you barely understand. Turns out their village was overrun by raiders, burned to the ground, everyone fled, you share what little you have. They bring news, there's a kingdom rising across the river. Tall walls, metal swords, a leader who drinks from golden cups. Your father laughs, says kingdoms fall, just give it time. Eventually you become an elder. Sort of, you're maybe 35, maybe 40, no one's counting. Children look at you with quiet awe, mostly because you still have most of your teeth. You tell them stories of your sister, of the honey, of the fire that took your brother. But you know deep down that these words are already slipping away. There's no record, no ink, no stone tablet with your name carved into it, just wind and fire and dust. One day you will die and not even your bones will remember. And yet, oddly, there's comfort in that. You were never meant to be remembered by history, only by the stars and the trees and the quiet sigh of the earth. And tonight, for the first time in thousands of years, someone remembers you. The sound of wooden shuttles slapping against looms surrounds you like a heartbeat, rhythmic, relentless. That is the music of your life now, thread pulling, snapping, twisting. You are a worker in an ancient textile workshop, but worker is a kind word. Threadbearer might be closer. You're barely more than a body whose only job is to move fabric from the living to the wealthy. You're in what was once the Hittite Empire, though no one says that aloud anymore. Borders have shifted. Kings have come and gone. But this room, this long dusty hall of looms remains the same. Stale air, worn fingers, bent backs. You wake before sunrise like everyone else. But today the sky feels especially heavy. The kind of grey that makes you question if the sun even plans on showing up. You swing your legs off your sleeping mat joints, creaking like old carts, and pull your hair into a tight knot. There's no mirror. You don't need one. You know exactly what you look like. Tired. You shuffle to the workshop where rows of looms stretch like ribs across a giant creaking beast. The floor's covered in stray threads, dust, and the occasional chicken feather. There's a cat somewhere, fat and smug, that catches mice while you catch scoldings. No one feeds the cat. Somehow it always eats. Your hands find their place on the loom, instinctively. Push, pull, slide, knot. You've done it so many times that your fingers move even when your mind drifts sometimes into old songs, sometimes into blank. Nothing push, pull, slide, knot. That fabric, it'll go to the palace. A prince will wipe his hands on it after eating dates. He didn't peel himself. You'll get a barley cake if you're lucky. Historians still argue whether these state-controlled workshops were prestigious places or prisons in disguise. You have a guess. Here's a clue. The door's locked from the outside. One of the older women beside you hums an old lullaby. She's been here for decades longer than anyone remembers. She says she used to weave patterns of stars and serpents when she still had sight in both eyes. Now she mostly hums and pats your hand when she sees the blood come back under your fingernails. Sometimes your skin just splits open from the dry flax. You're allowed one break halfway through the day. You eat while seated. No leaving the workshop, no talking. Unless it's about the work. Your meal a chunk of dried lentil paste and a half-rotten fig. You savour the fig like it's cake from the gods. One of the younger girls tries to whistle. She gets hit with a cane for that. No music during weaving. The threads might tangle with mischief, the overseer says. You don't know if that's superstition or just a handy excuse to crush joy. Sometimes you wonder what the fabric you weave looks like when it's finished. You only see it in tight, unfinished swatches, folded, rolled, taken away. You've heard rumours of your fabric in markets, in Egypt, even Greece. But to you, they're just long whispers, carried on merchant winds. You'll never ride. A travelling scribe once passed through and said your village made the finest linen east of the great rivers. You don't remember his name. You remember the way he looked at your hands, though, like you were a tool, not a person. Like your blisters had nothing to do with art. Push, pull, slide, knot. The work never ends. If the threads snag, you're the one blamed. If the dye fades too fast, it's your fault, even though it came from herbs stored too long in the sun. No one cares about the truth, just the cloth. At night you stagger back to your sleeping mat. It smells like old wool and stale breath. Your fingers twitch as you sleep, mimicking the day's motions. You once woke up mid-dream, still weaving with invisible thread in the air. You laughed, then you cried quietly, "There are no stars in the workshop, just oil lamps that spit black smoke. You miss stars." One day, a young boy collapses at his loom. Heat stroke or exhaustion, no one knows. The overseer drags him to the side, splashes water on his face, then puts a younger girl in his spot. She's maybe 7. Her hands tremble on the shuttle. You say nothing. What would you say? You're not supposed to speak unless you're spoken to. You're not supposed to sing whistle, sit wrong, smile wrong, or make jokes. Once a woman made a pun about loom threads and fate, and she was slapped so hard she couldn't chew for a week. Still sometimes you whisper to the threads. Stories, secrets, lies. You tell them your real name, the one you've never spoken aloud. You tell them about a time when your mother held your face and said you were made for more than this. You tell them you want to run. The threads never answer, but they hold your secrets tight, woven into every sheet. The overseer's youngest son comes in once a week. He watches you with the curious malice of a child who's never been told no. One day he steps on your foot while you're weaving and laughs when you wince. You resist the urge to accidentally poke him with a shuttle you want to badly. That night, you spit in his direction as you leave. It's the most rebellion you've dared in months. It feels good. One evening, while sweeping, you find a scrap of fabric tucked behind a beam. It's yours. You recognize the pattern. A tiny snake you embroidered by accident while dreaming. You hide it in your tunic. It's the only thing you've ever made that stayed with you. A minor rebellion. A silent scream. Push, pull, slide, knot. The older woman dies in her sleep one night. No ceremony, no weeping. Just a new weaver in her place the next day. And the loom doesn't even pause. You remember her song though. You hum it under your breath as you work softly, carefully, until your voice is just a breath in the dark. One morning a nobleman visits. He walks between the looms praising the consistency of the cloth. He never once looks you in the eye. You watch his embroidered robes swish past and think, I probably made that. Then you wonder how many people had to die so he could wear it. But you don't say that aloud, you just keep weaving. Silently, tirelessly, because you are thread, you are background, you are the pattern no one sees until it's worn thin and discarded. But tonight someone sees you, your feet are numb. They've been that way since dawn, not from cold, though it's bitter in the highlands this time of year, but from standing on rough stone all day unmoving. You're a stonemason's apprentice, which is to say, you are a hammer that bleeds. The sun crests over the jagged hilltops like a slow dagger. You don't get to enjoy it. Sunlight means the overseer's coming, and if the overseer is coming, you'd better already be lifting something heavy and dangerous. You hoist a block of limestone onto a wooden sled, your knees popping like old hinges. One wrong shift of weight, and the stone will snap your fingers clean off. You wouldn't be the first. You're building a temple. That's what they tell you. A house for the gods. You haven't seen a god, but you've definitely seen a lot of people die in their name. The scaffolding creaks like a dying animal as you climb. The rope harness around your waist is mostly for show. If you fall, it'll snap like overcooked barley. The wind up here is sharp and rude, yanking at your tunic, like it wants you to quit the job entirely. You think about it, often, but you don't. You stay. You chip. You sweat. You ache. Below you the carved face of the god, some amalgamation of ox. Eagle and thundercloud stares up, half-shaped, half-glaring. You're told your chisel will help define its jaw. Imagine that. Your work seen by generations, they just won't know your name. Historians still argue whether these temples were built with forced labour or paid craftsmen. You smile bitterly. Paid might mean a daily bowl of lentils and a slightly slower death. At noon, you descend for the communal meal. It's a mess of grains and something greenish. The older workers joke that it used to be soup once. You eat it anyway. Every bite keeps your ribs from showing through your tunic, which already fits like a ghost's bedsheet. Nearby a man's coughing blood. He says it's from the dust. The stone powder gets into your lungs and stays there, carving its own little sculpture inside your chest. You've been coughing too. There's a whisper among the crew of a rebellion brewing 3 valleys over. Some farmers refusing to pay temple tribute. The overseer laughs when he hears, "Let's see if their grain grows without the god's favour," he says. You're not so sure the god cares about grain. Push, chip, wipe, repeat. A misstrike today leaves a line down the statue's brow. Your breath catches. You try to buff it out, but the overseer notices. He says nothing. But later you find your dinner missing. Message received. It's hard to sleep when your bones throb like church bells. You wrap your hands in strips of linen. They stick to your skin with dried blood and sweat. You wonder if this god even wants a temple, or if it's just something men decided sounded impressive. One of the elders tells stories about a time before stone, before metal, when people worshipped trees. Simple quiet. You like that idea. Trees don't demand temples, they just stand. There's a boy in the crew who sings softly when he thinks no one's listening. His voice is high, sweet, something between a dove and a prayer. You catch him once humming beside a stone block, and he blushes like he's been caught stealing. You tell him to keep singing. The stones don't mind. That night there's a storm. Lightning cracks across the ridge and sets a storage hut ablaze. You watch the fire eat the tools, the ropes, the blueprints. No one moves to stop it. It feels like justice. But the next morning, you're handed a chisel and told to get back to it. You do. What else is there? You try carving something small on the inside of the god's ear, a mark, a glyph, maybe your name. A tiny rebellion no one will see, unless the god hears. You imagine someone 1,000 years from now brushing away the dust and finding your mark, wondering who you were, what you thought, what you dreamed. You dream of rain that doesn't sting, of bread that's warm, of a life where your hands aren't tools. Sometimes you dream of flying, but then the hammer slips, the chisel jumps blood again. Not much, just enough to remind you that you are not stone. Someone once said the gods reward labour. You suspect the gods reward architecture and forget who built it. There's a ritual next week. They'll consecrate the statue with blood and incense. You'll be watching from the shadows, wrapped in bandages, pretending you're proud, pretending it was worth it. Push, chip, wipe, repeat. A child will see the god's face years from now and whisper, "Wow." They won't know about you, but tonight we do. The air smells like mud, rot, and something sharp you can't name. You squint through the mist as you push your barrow deeper into the marshland. Every wheel rotation groaning like it's begging for retirement. You are a peat cutter in the swamps of medieval Friesland, or maybe it's Flanders or East Anglia. Frankly, it doesn't matter. All these bogs blur together once the wet gets into your bones. You wake up soaked most mornings, not because of rain, though there's plenty of that, but because your hut was built in a rush, like everything else in your life. Your mattress is straw, or what used to be straw, before it absorbed enough water to evolve into a new ecosystem. A rat runs over your foot as you tug on your leather boots, already splitting at the seams. You don't flinch. If it's not biting you, it's not a problem. Today's job is simple. Dig, slice, lift, stack, and hope the sun shines long enough to dry the bricks of peat into something burnable. Fuel for the richer folks' hearths. You're the middleman between ancient plant sludge and someone's cozy fire. It sounds almost noble if you say it fast. Historians still argue whether peat cutting was sustainable living or environmental tragedy. You just know it's cold, wet, and miserable. Your spade sinks into the earth with a slurp. The first cut always sounds like the land sighing. You slice deep, then scoop out a chunk, dense, dark, and older than any calendar you've ever seen. You stack it on the cart and move on. Slice, scoop, stack. It's rhythmic in a funeral march kind of way. You're not alone out here. Your cousin works the next trench over whistling a tune that barely cuts through the mist. There's talk that the bog preserves more than peat bodies sometimes. Last week they found a hand, just a hand, still curled like it had something to say. They buried it deeper, said a prayer, got back to work. The bog eats everything, tools, shoes, secrets. Once you lost a shovel in a sudden sinkhole. It vanished like a coin down a well. You stared for a moment, then borrowed someone else's and kept going. Time is money. Except you never see either. Your boss says the dried bricks must be perfectly shaped like loaves of bread. The irony stings since you haven't had real bread in weeks. Just mash root stew when lucky, a boiled egg. If the chickens are feeling generous, lunch is a quiet affair. You eat seated on the barrow's edge, biting into a hunk of cheese so hard it could be mistaken for a fossil. Your jaw clicks, you chew anyway. The sun peers out for half a moment and you feel bold enough to remove your hood. Mist immediately reclaims the sky like a jealous lover. The wind laughs at you, shrill and petty. You keep going. Mid-afternoon, your foot slips in the mire. You fall hard, face first. The mud is cold and clings like guilt. You spit it out, blink and see something glinting beneath the surface. A brooch, bronze covered in green patina. You hold it up imagining the person who lost it. Centuries ago. Probably a chieftain's wife, a warrior, a thief. You pocket it, a small rebellion. One souvenir for a life without holidays. Push, scoop, stack, repeat. Your hands are raw, nails rimmed with dark filth. The kind that never washes off. Your teeth ache from clenching against the cold. Your knees grind every time you squat. Still you move, because if you stop, the damp gets inside you, into your lungs, into your willpower. The bog doesn't care about your comfort, but you whisper to it anyway. Little things, regrets, fantasies. You confess your crush on the baker's apprentice, the one with ash on her cheeks and sarcasm on her tongue. You tell the bog you want to marry her, buy a goat, maybe own a dry patch of land one day, a shack, a fence, a future. The bog listens, never judges, never answers. Sometimes you think you hear singing. Deep low bone, hollow music. Could be wind, could be ghosts, could be both. Once a man tried to escape this life, vanished one night, said he was heading for the city. They found his satchel 3 days later in the marsh. No man, just the bag floating like a warning. You stay, you all stay. At dusk, you drag the barrow home. Your back screams in protest. Your shoulders feel like they've been carrying not just peat, but centuries of invisible weight. You stack the drying bricks near your hut. Pray it doesn't rain tonight and wash your hands in a puddle. The water doesn't get any cleaner, no matter how long you scrub. Inside the fire sputters. Not from peat, you can't afford to burn your labour. You settle for twigs and hope you unwrap the brooch you found. Turn it over in your hands, it looks like a sunburst. You press it to your chest just to feel something warm, even if imagined. Your cousin knocks at the door, says they heard how you slipped, offers you a slice of turnip. You accept like it's a feast. Later under your damp blanket, you dream you're sinking. Not drowning, just gently being swallowed. The earth closes over you like a soft mouth. But when you wake, you're still above the surface, still digging, still unseen. Still here, you hold your breath as the cart rumbles past. Inside it sacks of grain, maybe some dried fish, and the merchant's son picking his teeth with a chicken bone and pretending he's seen battle. You press yourself against the alley wall, invisible as brick. If he notices you, it'll cost you maybe your dignity, maybe your ribs. You've learned to gamble with both. You're a city orphan, and your job, if you can call it that, is to survive. This medieval metropolis is a cathedral of stone soot and shouted insults, and you're just another stain on its hem, born to no one, owned by no one. One of history's great anonymous lives. You won't make it into the paintings unless you're the background blur behind a saint. Hey, at least you're free. That's what you tell yourself. No master, no taxes, no prayers forced at dagger point. But freedom, you've learned, is just another word for hunger. The church bell rings. It's not your cue to pray. It's your signal to sneak behind the bakery while the crowd moves toward mass. You scurry through tight alleys, dodging chamber pots, hurled from upper windows like rude gifts from heaven. The cobblestones are slick with everything, rain horse droppings and the occasional broken dream. You reach the bakery. The smell hits first warm dough, singed flour, the faint perfume of yeast rising like a hymn. You slip around the back, lift a loose board and wait. Sometimes the baker's boy leaves scraps here either out of pity or laziness. Today, half a heel of rye. It's dense and tough as bark, but you bite in anyway. Your teeth ache, your stomach sighs. Historians still argue whether medieval cities were centres of innovation or pits of pestilence. You'd say both. You once saw a man invent a water lifting machine and another man drown in a flooded latrine 5 streets over. There's a girl who watches you sometimes from her family's window. She's maybe 9, all clean cheeks and ribboned braids. You saw her toss an apple once. She missed, you still ate it. You dream about that girl sometimes, not in a creepy way, just curiosity. What's it like to have shoes without holes? What's it like to sleep without clutching your belongings to your chest like a dragon hoarding scraps? Midday the market square is chaos. You dive into it like a fish into a net. Voices hawk goods you can't afford: salt, cod, barley, beer, dyed cloth, dried figs. A man plays a hurdy-gurdy while his monkey claps on cue. Children laugh, you envy them. Not the laughter, their full cheeks. You spot a purse hanging loosely from a trader's belt. Your fingers twitch, you know the move. Bump, lift, vanish. You don't do it. Not because of ethics, because last week a boy tried the same and lost 2 fingers. The crowd cheered. Justice, they said. Instead you look for dropped coins, distracted vendors, broken crates with salvageable bits. You find half a candle, a blessing. Tonight's dark won't win so easily. There's a fight at the butcher's stall. 2 men red-faced and screaming over a cut of meat. You slip through the crowd, snag a strip of fat dangling from the hook and run. You don't stop until your lungs burn and your sides scream. You eat in a hollow between buildings tucked behind rotting barrels and forgotten prayers. You gnaw the fat like it's steak. It's salty and chewy and briefly glorious. Rain starts. Not a downpour, just the kind that seeps into your clothes and your will. You find an overhang curl up and watch the world blur. A friar walks by drunk or lost or both. He mumbles a psalm, then stops and stares at you. You stare back. He tosses you a copper. It hits your foot. You nod. He stumbles on. You're not sure who, pitied who. Later the candle saves you. You light it in your little corner shielded from wind by an upturned crate. The flicker casts shadows that look like friends. You imagine one of them speaks. You laugh, then cough, then stop. There's a boy down the lane with a fiddle. He plays soft songs. You hum along. It's the closest thing to a lullaby you've had in years. You think about running away. Maybe join a caravan. Maybe lie your way into a kitchen job. Maybe find a monastery that doesn't ask questions, but your feet stay rooted. Cities trap you, not with walls, but with habits. Push, scavenge, hide, repeat. You know you'll die here. Not today. Maybe not this winter, but one of them. The city doesn't let go, but tonight you're warm enough. The bread sits heavy in your belly. The candle dances. The rain drums a rhythm like a heartbeat. And somewhere above, behind a soot-covered window, a girl hums a tune she doesn't know. You know, and for a moment you don't feel forgotten at all. Your fingers are raw from shelling beans. They bleed a little at the edges, cracked open from repetition and cold, and you just keep going, because if you stop your master will know, and if he knows you'll feel it in the ribs. You're a servant girl, maybe 12, maybe 15. No one has kept track, least of all you. In this manor house nestled behind ivy-streaked walls and haughty stained glass, you're the ghost that scrubs the floor and disappears before sunrise. The nobility doesn't say your name unless they're angry. You try not to give them a reason. Hey guys, tonight we're taking a slow, careful step into a place that smells of beeswax, polish and rotten linen, where whispers echo louder than shouts, and the highest crime is being noticed at the wrong time. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're awake before the cockerel even thinks about it. You don't have a bed, not really, just a linen sack filled with straw that smells faintly of mildew and someone else's sweat. Your room is under the stairs next to the root cellar. Sometimes rats crawl over your ankles at night. You've named one of them, it's the only friend who listens. The first task. Fire always the fire. You steal through the halls like a mouse in wool socks carrying a bundle of kindling. The big hearth in the Lord's chamber needs warmth before his toes even consider touching the floor. The Lord who smells of wine and wears robes heavy enough to crush you. You light the fire, the coals spit, you wipe soot on your apron. Another servant might be down the hall, scrubbing chamber pots with a face like a thundercloud. You nod to each other, unspoken alliance. You both know the rules. Don't break things. Don't speak unless asked. Don't get caught looking too long at anything worth more than you. Breakfast isn't for you. The house eats in layers. Nobles first, then their children, then the steward and housekeeper. You eat if there's crust left. If the dogs don't get it, your tasks are endless. Fetch scrub sew. Repeat. Mending a hem torn by some lady's tantrum. Dusting shelves that haven't held books in years. Cleaning blood from a hunting knife, though no one tells you what it killed. You try not to think about it. Historians still argue whether manor life was a noble refuge or a gilded cage. You'd say both, if anyone ever asked. One day you spill a pitcher of ale. It's not your fault. Your foot caught the edge of a rug. Something ornate and useless. The ale splashes across a table laid with roasted quail and figs, and everyone turns to look at you like you just killed a bishop. The mistress gasps. The Lord curses, and your whole body stiffens like a hare caught mid-step. A manservant grabs you by the arm. You're dragged out of the room like a bad smell. Down to the kitchen, you get 3 lashes with a willow switch, could have been worse. You've heard stories back to work. Later in the laundry room, steam clings to everything. Your hands sink into boiling water, skin flushing red. You beat linen against a rock, then scrub it with lye soap that stings your cuts. You're washing the very tablecloth you stained, and yet when the cloth dries and folds perfectly on the silver tray, you feel a strange pride. It's not for them, it's for you, because you did that. You a nobody with a cracked voice and hollow belly, made something clean in a world that never is. There's an older maid who gives you scraps sometimes. She once worked upstairs, wore lace, danced with a knight. Then she broke something, a vase, maybe her spirit, and landed down here. She teaches you how to listen for footsteps, how to lie with your eyes, how to look busy even when you're hiding. Don't get dreams in your head, she says, wringing out a chemise. They'll only get knocked out again. At night, after the nobles are asleep and the candles gutter low, you sneak into the hallway. You look at the paintings, lords in armour, ladies with cold smiles, you make faces at them. Stick out your tongue, just to remind yourself they're not watching. Once you wander into the library, the room smells like dust and forgotten arguments. You run your fingers over the leather spines. You can't read, no one taught you, but the books feel powerful, like holding thunder. You make a promise to yourself, whisper it in the dark. Someday you'll know what the words say, all of them. Sometimes you imagine being the lady of the house, waking up to breakfast in bed, slipping into dresses that need 2 people to fasten, walking down halls that hush when you enter. But mostly you imagine just having your own door, one that locks, one that opens to something better. Push, scrub, bleed, repeat. Your life is lived in corners, beneath tables, behind curtains. If you're good, no one sees you. If you're lucky, you see them first. And yet in all the silence, all the smallness, there's a fire in you the hearth can't match. A stubbornness, a thread of defiance so thin no one notices, but you feel it burning quietly beneath the apron and bruises. Because you know something the nobles don't. You're still here, you're still listening, and the day may come far off. Or never, when the house learns your name not in anger but in reverence, but until then you wash the floor. One blister at a time, the wind bites harder out here across this wide bare field at the edge of everything. No trees to break the cold, no walls to hold the sound, just soil, sky, and a silence that feels older than time. You tighten the wool around your shoulders, though it barely helps, it's rough, stiff, and smells like wet animal, but it's yours. Well, technically it's not. It belongs to the landowner, just like the sheep, just like the hut you sleep in, just like you're a shepherd, not by choice, by inheritance. Your father was one, your grandfather too. It's not so much a profession as a slow sentence, served in bleating company and distant glances. Sheep don't talk back, that's their best quality, but they're dumb as posts. You've seen one walk straight off a ledge, another got stuck in a bush and nearly died because it forgot how to walk backward. You dragged it out by its tail. It bit you. Didn't even say thanks. You rise before the sun, not because of ambition, but because the sheep won't wait. You know every single one of them, not by name, but by limp ear shape or stupidity level. That one always tries to headbutt you. That one sleeps standing up. That one looks like it owes you money. The grass is still damp with dew. You trudge through it, boots squelching with each step. Your stick taps the ground rhythmically, a sound that means keep moving, don't lag, and occasionally stop eating that poison plant, you idiot. Historians still argue whether medieval shepherds were lowly outcasts or essential cogs in the rural economy. You'd laugh at that debate if you weren't so tired, it's both. You keep the wool coming, the meat walking the landowner's purse full, and in return you get scraps and blisters. The sky turns pink as dawn arrives. It's beautiful, sure, but it doesn't feed you. You tear a chunk from yesterday's loaf so stale it might double as a weapon and gnaw on it like a determined rodent. You spend most days alone, talking to the sheep, the wind, sometimes the sky. You make up songs, bad ones, and sing them loudly. No one complains, except that one sheep. You're convinced he judges your pitch. One day you find a lamb half frozen in a ditch. Its legs broken. The landowner would say leave it, waste of effort, but you carry it back to your hut, wrap it in your cloak and splint the leg with a carved bit of kindling. It lives. That week it follows you everywhere like a woolly shadow. You start calling it Bishop because it's self-important and refuses to walk in straight lines. There's a stretch of days when it rains non-stop. The entire field turns to soup. Your boots fill with mud. Your socks stay wet for 3 days straight. Your skin starts peeling between your toes. You think briefly about becoming a monk, just for the dry feet. Your hut leaks in 4 places. You catch the drips in wooden bowls. It becomes a game which one will overflow first. Still there's peace out here that city folks don't understand. When the sheep are calm and the clouds roll by like sleepy giants, and the wind hums a lullaby through the grass, it feels like the earth itself is rocking you, gently, patiently. You carve things sometimes, little faces into sticks, a bird a sheep, obviously, once a knight complete with sword. You stuck him in the ground like a toy soldier. The sheep ate him. There's a girl in the village who sells cheese. You see her every market day. She always gives you the crumbliest wedge and wants a smile that's stuck in your memory like a splinter. You've never said more than 6 words to her, but you've imagined entire conversations. You wonder if she thinks of you at all. Probably not. You're the shepherd, the one with grass in his hair and a permanent squint. Still, it's something to think about on cold nights. Quirky fact, some shepherds in the mountains used curved horns to communicate across miles. You tried once with a hollowed reed. It made a sound like a farting duck. The sheep scattered. You've never lived it down. There's a fox that prowls near your field. You've seen his prints, clever little ovals with too much confidence. You set a trap once. Caught your own foot. Bishop bleated like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. One morning you wake to find 2 sheep missing. Panic hits like cold water. You scramble up hills, tear through thickets, call names that only mean something to you. You find them near the creek stuck between rocks, alive. Cold, but alive. You cry. You don't know why. Relief maybe. Or just exhaustion, finally demanding payment. You lead them back. The flock welcomes them with a collective indifference. Typical. Push count. Watch. Repeat. You mark time by the wool. Shearing. The lambing. The market trips. Seasons don't just change, they drag you with them. Spring coats everything in mud and birth. Summer bakes your scalp through your hat. Autumn smells like wet fur and rotting leaves. Winter is a test. Every year pass or freeze. But even in the darkest frost, when the stars snap and crack in the sky like glass, you find yourself smiling, because no one yells at you here. No one beats you. The sheep may be dumb, but they don't lie. The wind may be harsh, but it's honest, and sometimes when the moon is full and the world is quiet and you lean against a rock with your eyes half shut, you swear you hear music. Not real music, not instruments, just something older, the earth humming to itself. And in that moment, for reasons you'll never explain, you feel rich. It's not the mud that gets you first, it's the smell, a thick eye-watering stew of fish guts, chamber pots, livestock droppings, rotting straw, and things you genuinely hope are vegetables. You try not to breathe too deeply, but you have to breathe sometime. You're in the town now, and you don't belong here. You live on the edge, literally. Your family's cottage squats at the border where the fields give way to stone, where crows outnumber cats, and every building leans as though it's either whispering a secret or about to fall over. The air tastes like chimney soot. The people look like they've been awake for 100 years, and yet this place pulses with something. It's not excitement, more like survival with a grudge. Your job today, you're apprenticing under the tanner. Congratulations, you've officially won the medieval lottery of stinks. The tannery squats near the river, because that's where the waste flows easiest. Cow hides pile up in heaps that glisten faintly in the morning sun. You're told to stir the lime pits with a stick that's older than you and gloves that barely count as gloves. The hides bubble faintly, shedding hair like molting beasts. Oh, and the best part. After the lime soak, they go into the dog dung vat. Yes, dog dung fermented, slopped into barrels. You dunk the leather in and mash it around with your stick while pretending you've gone completely nose blind. Historians still argue whether tanning was the worst smelling medieval job or simply the most publicly mocked. Honestly, you'd hand the award to whoever emptied chamber pots during feasts. At least you're outside. Your master is a leathery old man with no teeth and a cackle like a snapped fiddle string. He laughs at everything, including the time you fell into the lime pit and came out looking like boiled bread. He didn't help, just said, "Well, now you're cured." You hate him. You also suspect he's the only reason you're still alive. When one of the town boys tried to steal your pouch, the tanner whipped a dagger at him so fast it stuck in the lad's sleeve. "Pick a softer mark," he said, then winked at you. He teaches you more than you want to know: how to skin a goat without slicing the belly, how to gauge leather by the scent alone, how to chew birch bark, to soothe your jaw when it aches from clenching in the cold, and how to lie. "Tell the leathers from Florence," he says, rubbing grease into a boot. "They'll pay double, won't know the difference." You run deliveries through the town, past the blacksmiths where sparks fly like fireflies on speed. past the weavers where hands blur across the loom like it's trying to escape. Past the bakers which smells like heaven with taxes, you cut through the market square, dodging chickens, gossip, and a man trying to sell you a spoon that he swears cures plague. The square is chaos. Always jugglers compete with preachers. Farmers scream about stolen cabbages. A pig once ran away with a sausage in its mouth. The irony still stings. Your boots slip on cobbles slick with mystery. You know the alleyways to avoid the ones where rats walk in pairs and people vanish if they don't keep moving. You also know the shortcut through the brewer's yard, where you might catch a whiff of barley before it turns sour. Sometimes you deliver to the apothecary. That place is magic. Shelves of glass jars, each holding strange colours and stranger shapes. The woman who runs it has silver hair and eyes like burnt honey. She never smiles, but once she gave you a licorice root and said, "For courage, you didn't ask why. You keep it hidden in your tunic. Still chew it on bad days." Quirky fact. Medieval towns had gong farmers who dug out the cesspits and transported human waste out of town, usually at night. You saw one once covered head to toe in waxed cloth eyes, red, singing softly. He nodded to you. You nodded back. It felt respectful. You hear rumours in the market. A bishop arrested, a merchant poisoned, a noble caught in a barn with a milkmaid and a chicken. None of it concerns you until it does. One day the guard grabs you, says you stole a coin purse. You didn't, but they don't care. They drag you to the stocks, ignore your protests. Spit flies, someone throws a turnip, it misses, barely. You sit there, wrists trapped, heart hammering, as laughter circles like vultures. The tanner shows up, says calmly, "This one works for me." He pays a bribe. You don't know how much, you never ask. But he limps home slower that day. You thank him. He shrugs. "You'll pay me back." One hide at a time, you do push, stitch, stir, repeat. One evening you sit by the tannery, fire hands, raw eyes heavy. The old man tosses you a scrap of leather. "Make something," he says. You frown. "What don't matter, just yours." So you do. A tiny pouch, nothing fancy, but it's even strong. Yours. The first thing that is, and you tuck the licorice root inside it, like a promise. You go home after dark, past houses with candles flickering behind thin curtains, past songs from alehouses and arguments from windows, past the smell of soup you'll never taste to your corner of the world, your edge, but you carry the pouch and the smell of dog dung, and somehow you don't hate either, because this city may not want you, but you've carved your space into it, one stink at a time. The door creaks open before you knock, not because anyone's waiting, just because it never fully closes. Hinges are rusted. The wood's been swollen with damp for 3 seasons too long, and the latch lost during the fire 2 winters ago. You step into the cottage with the kind of hesitation usually reserved for trespassers or ghosts. But this is your grandmother's house, or what's left of it. She sits by the hearth wrapped in 3 shawls and 1 mangy cat. Her eyes don't see well anymore, but she hears you. Always hears you. "Took you long enough," she mutters. "I thought you'd gone and died like the miller." You haven't heard about the miller. She waves it off, boiled his own foot. Mistook it for a turnip, you nod. Accept the story. It could be true. The fire barely gives off warmth. It's more smoke than flame, but this room smells like dried herbs, ash, and something familiar lavender, or just the memory of it. Your grandmother was a healer. Still is in her own way. People still come knocking in the dark with fevers, boils, questions they don't trust to priests. She keeps a row of jars behind the bed, each labelled in a script, only she can read. Dried nettle, crushed poppy, spiderwebs for binding, mistletoe for wombs, or curses. Depends on the day. You've watched her save lives with a smear of paste and a half-whispered rhyme. You've also watched her shout at a jar for 5 straight minutes because the lid wouldn't open. She once told you medicine and magic are just cousins who share bad manners. Historians still argue whether women like her were midwives, witches, or simply wise. The answer, as always, depends on who's holding the torch and who's standing near the stake. Your job now. Help her, or rather, carry things. Stir pots and run errands to the graveyard when she needs bones. Fresh ones, she says. The old ones are too opinionated. It's not glamorous, but it matters. You start learning without realizing how to feel a pulse in the wrist, not the neck, too obvious, too jumpy. How to boil valerian just long enough to calm a child, but not so long it induces visions of flying sheep. How to bribe the baker's apprentice for a warm roll by offering to cure his boils. Again, you also learn discretion, because not everyone likes what your grandmother does. The priest scowls when he passes her gate. He once muttered that the devil reads her recipes. She cackled and offered to lend him her spectacles. The townspeople are more practical. They know the church offers prayers, but your grandmother offers results. Still, no one says her name too loudly, just in case. One day a girl arrives with her face half covered. You recognize her merchant's daughter. She doesn't speak, just hands over a pouch of coins and whispers something you don't catch. Your grandmother nods, sends you out. When you return, the girl's gone. Your grandmother looks tired, you don't ask. You know better. That night she gives you a bundle of yarrow and says, "Boil this." Don't ask why, just do it, you obey. The cat, ancient and mean, starts following you around. You name it Tooth. It never responds, but sometimes it blinks at you like it's judging your entire lineage. Quirky fact, in some parts of medieval Europe, people believed cats were witches' spies reporting nightly to the devil. If that's true, Tooth is definitely middle management. You begin to see things differently. A cough isn't just a cough, it's a question. A rash is a riddle, a fever is a ticking clock. Your grandmother makes you test everything on yourself. You'll never give poison by mistake if you've tasted it first, she says. You spend 3 days hallucinating that you're married to a turnip. She finds this hilarious. She teaches you spells, not real ones. Well, maybe little rhymes, chants things, said while grinding or cutting. Words shape the root, she claims. Even if the root doesn't care, you write them down in a book made from stitched scraps and charcoal ink. It becomes your secret. A book of knowledge, and maybe something more. One stormy evening, a knight shows up, not armoured, just cloaked and wet. His hand bleeds through a bandage. Your grandmother doesn't blink. "Sit," she says. He does. You clean the wound. "Stitch it." He grits his teeth, but doesn't flinch. Afterward, he places a gold coin on the table. She ignores it. "Keep it," she tells you. "Buy sugar, and one of those useless combs you like. It's the most expensive thing you've ever touched." The next day, you try to make your own poultice. It works, almost. The cat sneezes for 3 hours and the neighbour boy breaks out in green spots. But the pain's gone, that counts. You don't tell anyone, but you feel powerful, not like a lord or a knight or even a merchant. Not loud power, quiet power. The kind that works in candlelight and back rooms, the kind that heals before it's thanked and disappears before it's blamed. Your grandmother starts forgetting things, where she put her spoon. The names of herbs she's known since before you were born. Sometimes she calls you by your mother's name. One night, she wakes screaming. You hold her hand until she sleeps again. You know the time is coming, so you prepare. You copy her recipes, you ask questions, you whisper her spells until they feel like your own breath. And when the day comes, soft cold too bright, she doesn't wake. You sit beside her for hours. The fire burns low, the cat curls on her chest. You don't cry. Not yet. You take her shawl, her notes, her jars. You bury her under the hawthorn tree, the one she always said was watching her. The next night, someone knocks at the door. It's a woman, pale with grief, holding a child too hot to touch. She says, "The priest said pray, but I need something more." You step aside, let her in. You light the fire, set the pot to boil, and you whisper, just like your grandmother did, "We'll fix this, because the work doesn't stop. It passes on." You wake to the sound of scratching. Not rats, at least not yet. No, this is sharper, almost rhythmic. When you open your eyes, it stops. Tooth. The cat is staring at the door. Something or someone is outside. You rise slowly. The floor is cold, even through your boots. The air smells of smoke and chamomile. You crack the door and peer out. A bundle lies on your threshold, wrapped in coarse linen tied with twine. You know what it is before you touch it. You've seen too many. A body, small, still warm, no note, just a whisper left in the darkness. You carry it inside, lay it gently by the hearth. The child barely a year old, pale as ash, a faint bruise under the chin. You don't look too long, you've learned not to. There's no one to accuse, no name to record, just another forgotten breath. You bury them under the hawthorn tree beside your grandmother, whisper a blessing. A lie maybe, but a kind one. Then you scrub your hands raw and open the windows, let the wind carry something out because grief stinks too. The truth is, you've become part of the village now, not celebrated, not feared, just necessary. People nod at you, leave chickens in trade, ask for cures and sometimes stories. They call you her grandchild, not your name but close enough, but something's shifting. The priest visits you, first time in years. His robes are stained with damp and piety. You should come to Mass, he says. Make peace with God. You smile. I'm on good terms with his creatures. He doesn't smile back. Historians still argue whether medieval clergy feared women like you out of theological purity or professional jealousy, likely both. Soon after you find a painted symbol on your door. Red crude meant to scare you. It doesn't. You grind your herbs louder that night, still the tension grows, more mutters, fewer visitors. Then the trial, a baker's daughter falls ill, high fever fits speaking in tongues, classic possession or just a serious case of mouldy bread. Either way they want a scapegoat. The priest calls for an inquiry, which is code for, let's burn someone who makes us uncomfortable. Your name comes up. You're dragged to the village square. No trial really, just shouting accusations. Someone swears they saw you turn into a goat once. Another says your cat winked at them. Tooth, of course, hisses at everyone and makes things worse. You don't plead, you just breathe. Slow. Calm. Then the knight appears. Yes, the one with the stitched hand. He rides in like a cliché cloak, snapping eyes like cold iron. He says 2 words, she's mine. Everyone blinks. You blink. The priest blinks and sputters. She's what? Under my protection. The knight growls, harm her, and you answer to me. There's murmuring, some cheering, mostly confusion, but it's enough. They back off. The priest retreats, teeth grinding like millstones. The knight leaves without another word. You never see him again. You go home, shake, scream, laugh, then cry. You think maybe your grandmother cursed him with guilt, or maybe kindness comes back when least expected, like a weed in stone. Quirky fact, some medieval villages had official sin-eaters. People paid to symbolically consume the sins of the dead during funerals. They were shunned yet essential. Much like you. You decide it's time to leave, not far. Just farther than here. You pack light your book, your herbs, the pouch with the licorice root. You kiss Tooth. Goodbye. The cat bites you. Fair enough. You walk across hills, through woods, where the trees whisper louder than people, past rivers that smell of iron and memory, to a new village, smaller, poorer, but not unkind. They need a healer. You become one. The house is worse than the last, but it has a roof. Mostly, you mend it with stolen shingles and stubbornness. People come slowly at first, then more. You cure fevers, reset bones, deliver babies in candlelight, comfort the dying. One night, a boy knocks at your door, holding a rabbit with a broken leg. You fix it. He smiles like it's magic. It is. You plant new herbs, build shelves, learn new rhymes. You grow older, not old, not yet, but enough to feel it in your knees when it rains. One day you hear singing, children outside. They're chanting your name in a rhyme. It goes, Lady of nettle root and clay, heals your hurt, then walks away, don't cross her, or you might find your nose replaced with goat behind. You laugh until you choke. They ask you to teach them. You do. Carefully. You say magic isn't real. Then you show them how to stop a nosebleed with nettle calm grief with lavender and scare crows with string and garlic. They call you wise. It stings less than witch. Historians still argue whether village healers preserved lost medical knowledge or simply improvised until it stuck. You suspect both. You keep your grandmother's book close. Add to it, rewrite messy pages, scribble new symbols, hide notes only you can read. It becomes your life's work. And one day much later, when your hands are slower and your back refuses to bow for herbs, you leave it on a doorstep, wrapped in cloth tied with twine, just like that forgotten bundle long ago. But this time it's a gift, a guide, a whisper forward. Because the quiet pain of history's forgotten people doesn't end in silence. It teaches, it plants, it heals. One root at a time, you stir from sleep long before sunrise as usual. Your bones creak in protest. Your fingers ache from yesterday's gathering, and your knees sound like a haunted windmill, but you're used to it. Out the window, the village is still wrapped in blue-grey mist, like a secret waiting to be told. The fields beyond your house glisten with dew, and the thatched roofs glimmer in moonlight, each one hiding its own quiet misery, and sometimes small victories. You pull on your wool tunic, patchy but warm, and light the hearth. 1 spark, 2, 3. The flame catches like a sigh. You boil water with dried yarrow and a sliver of ginger root. It's not for you, it's for old Merelda, whose cough could wake the saints. You promised her relief. You always do. You pack your satchel. Carefully. You never know what the day might ask of you. Some days it's births, some it's burns, and some it's burying. You pass your reflection in the cracked glass and barely recognise yourself. The lines on your face aren't from worry. They're from knowing too much, from seeing too much, from being useful to a world that forgets to say thank you. Still, it's better than being remembered the wrong way. You think of your grandmother again, the way she hummed while mixing resin, the way she talked to dead bees like they might answer, the way she always said people don't fear death, they fear pain. Be the one who eases it. You walk to Merelda's with the tea still steaming. She greets you with a grunt and a crooked smile. Her house smells of onions and old shoes, and her dog barks at you like it's the first time. You feed her tea and honey rub balm on her chest and check her pulse. She tells you her dreams, nonsense stories about flying cows and talking moss. You nod as if they're gospel. On the way home, a boy flags you down. His brother stepped on a nail. You detour, clean the wound, bind it with fresh cloth and a poultice of crushed plantain. The boy tries not to cry. You hand him a peppermint leaf. By midday you've been to 4 houses, treated a burnt hand, soothed a colicky baby, and delivered a tincture to the tanner's wife, though she swears it's for a friend. You've also been paid in 2 eggs, a wilted cabbage, and half a song. You accept them all, with grace. Because what else would you do? Quirky fact, in many medieval villages, healers often accepted barter, usually in the form of bread ale, or services owed. One famous folk healer once charged only in riddles. It's unclear if that was wisdom or madness. As the sun dips low, you return home. You rest your feet by the fire. Tooth is gone, long dead and buried beneath the lilac bush. You never got another cat. None could replace her. There's a knock. It's rare now. Most people don't bother you after dark. You answer with your usual mix of suspicion and weary curiosity. It's a man, young, shaking, holding a girl with red glassy eyes. She's burning, he says. They said you know how to help. You let them in. Strip the girl's damp cloak, press a hand to her forehead. The heat rolls off like smoke from a forge. You go to work. It's hours before her breathing. Evens before the fever starts to slip away. The man doesn't speak much, just watches you, like you're spinning gold out of sawdust. When it's done, he asks, "How do you know all this?" You don't answer at first, you just say, "Because someone showed me." He leaves with tears in his eyes, leaves behind a wooden carving, a little fox, rough but full of charm. You put it on the shelf beside your grandmother's spoon. That night you sit with your book, you run your fingers over the pages. Some of the ink has faded, but the meaning is there. You write a new entry. Fever cured with yarrow cool cloth and soft words. Must not forget the soft words. Historians still argue whether women like you were the bedrock of medicine or simply tolerated until something went wrong. You've lived the answer. The next morning a letter arrives. Strange. No one writes to you. The seal is crude, just a pressed button, but the handwriting is clear. It's from a girl you taught years ago. She's moved to a town with stone walls and streets that don't flood. She's helping the sick there. They call her Wise Woman. She thanks you, you laugh, you cry. Both feel right. You go into the woods that day, not to gather, just to walk. The trees are taller than they used to be, or maybe you've shrunk. You reach a clearing and sit. The wind speaks in branches. The leaves gossip like old crones. The earth smells of memory and mushroom, and something else promise. You take off your shoes, feel the soil under your toes. This is where the forgotten live, you think. Not in books or stories or statues, but here in the people who carry their work forward. You whisper your grandmother's name, you say your own too. You stand, walk back. There's more work waiting, but you're not tired. Not yet. You didn't expect winter to come so fast. The first frost slinks in like a thief, stealing colour from the trees and feeling from your fingers. Your breath fogs as you step outside, and the thatch on your roof crunches with ice. In the mornings, you warm your hands by the fire until the skin itches and splits. You pull your cloak tight and head toward the woods. There's still time to gather before the snow claims everything. The forest feels quieter now, not empty, just cautious, like it knows what's coming. You gather what you can, dried nettle, rose hips, some stubborn burdock root. The ground is hard and your knees creak louder than your basket. On the walk back, your thoughts drift not forward, but backward. Not to childhood, but to the in-between years, the quiet middle, when life wasn't dramatic or dangerous, just relentless. You remember living in that damp village where the river always threatened to flood, where your patients aged faster than they should have, and where children you delivered grew up and moved away without ever knowing your name. You remember when you tried to leave medicine behind once. Just once you went to a coastal town, hoping anonymity might heal what memory couldn't. You tried your hand at weaving dyes, even attempted brewing. You burned half the barley and stained your hands blue for a week. It didn't last. A fisherman's wife collapsed in the square and instinct overruled exhaustion. You saved her. And that night, 3 people showed up at your door with ailments ranging from stomach worms to heartbreak. You stayed a year. The sea never suited you. Too loud, too salty, too many memories of what you couldn't fix. So you left. Again. These migrations, these quiet retreats from villages that once needed you desperately and then didn't have become your rhythm. You arrive when they're sick, you leave when they're suspicious, you never outstay usefulness, you never give them the chance to build a pyre. But this village, this one feels different. It's not just that the people are kinder, it's that they're tired of forgetting. You see it in how they talk about their dead, they name them out loud, in the market, in prayer. One morning a girl with white blonde hair visits you. She can't be older than 9. She holds her doll by the leg and says very seriously, "I want to be like you." You blink, old and creaky. She grins. No smart. You know stuff. You help people, you laugh. That's dangerous work. You know, I don't care. She says, "I'm not afraid of danger." But you are. Not for you. For her. Still, you give her a job. Sorting dried herbs into little bags. Teaching her names. Elderflower thyme, willowbark. She repeats them back like a spell. You don't tell her it is a spell. Not the dangerous kind. Just the kind that holds the world together. Her name is Lynn. She visits every day after her chores. Her hands are quick and her questions are quicker. Why does mint cool the skin? Why do people die if you cut them wrong? Why do dreams sometimes come true? You answer each one like it's the last you'll ever be asked. Not because you think she'll vanish, but because you've learned the world takes bright things without warning. One day she doesn't show up. You wait morning to dusk, nothing. The next day her mother comes, eyes hollow. Lynn has fallen ill. Fever, shaking visions. The usual symptoms, but faster, crueler. You run to their cottage with your satchel already open. She's on the floor, wrapped in furs, skin pale except for her burning cheeks. You do everything you can. The willow bark, the cold cloths, the poppy syrup. You sit by her all night murmuring the stories your grandmother told you, the ones about brave foxes and clever girls. But she doesn't wake. For 3 days you keep vigil. On the 4th she stirs. Her first word is mint. You weep so hard you startle the fire. When she finally sits up, she asks for soup and her doll. In that order, you make her both. It takes weeks, but she recovers. And when she does, she's somehow stronger. Not in body, in will. She never misses another day. Mainstream fact. In the 14th century, Europe child mortality was staggeringly high. Up to half of all children died before age 10. Most families didn't name their children until after their first birthday. Lynn becomes your shadow. You teach her everything. How to grind roots without bruising them. How to bind a sprain without cutting off blood. How to tell when someone is faking pain for sympathy or hiding it out of pride. She listens better than any adult you've known. One afternoon, you tell her the truth. That book on the shelf, it's yours someday. I'll add your name to the spine when you're ready. She doesn't smile. She looks solemn, like she understands what it means to inherit pain. You wake one night to knocking. Real knocking, not wind or memory. It's the tanner. His wife is in labour. Early twins. You grab your bag and your shawl. When you get there, it's chaos. Blood already pooling. The midwife is shaking. You take over without words. The first child is breech. You adjust gently. It's not the first time you whisper, calming lies into the mother's ear. Lynn holds the cloths, steady pale. But she doesn't flinch. The second child comes quieter, weaker. You rub him down with rosemary oil. Whisper at his lungs. Slap his foot gently. He screams. Everyone cheers. You hand the baby to his mother, then collapse on a stool and cry. Quietly, Lynn pats your shoulder like an adult. Quirky fact: many medieval women trained as midwives, but weren't recognised as official by the church. They were often the only medical help in childbirth, but were also the first blamed if anything went wrong. Lynn starts keeping her own notes in a little scrap journal. She draws plants and writes next to them, soothes sadness or makes people sleepy or dead depending. You scold her for that last one, but only a little. You start dreaming again about your grandmother, but this time she's not warning you, she's nodding. It's almost unsettling. Then one evening, a merchant rides into the village, tall, thin, with rings on every finger, and a cough he tries to hide behind silk. You're summoned. He's sceptical of you. I expected a man, he mutters. You check his pulse. I expected a better attitude. He nearly chokes on his own laugh. You diagnose him with lung rot, something you can slow but not cure. He offers you silver. You ask instead for books. Anything on healing. Anything on plants. He agrees. When he leaves, he gives you a parcel. Inside 3 pages copied from an Arabic text on surgery and a single dried flower from the south, a species you've never seen. Lynn examines it like treasure. Maybe we should move south, she says. Too hot, you say, sweat makes herbs mouldy, but you keep the flower pressed in the pages of your grandmother's book. Historians still argue whether knowledge in medieval Europe was more often lost or hoarded. You've seen both. Some scribes burn what they don't understand. Others preserve what they'll never use. You and Lynn start copying your book twice. One copy for her, one to leave behind, because you know you won't live forever. You feel it more each day in your fingers, in your thoughts, in how the walk to the stream seems longer than it used to. You sit her down one afternoon. It's time you say, you're ready. She's quiet for a long time. Then will I be forgotten too? You look at her. You touch the corner of her eye just where a tiny new wrinkle is forming. Not if you do the remembering. Winter returns, harder this time. You fall ill. Not dramatic, just tired. Too tired. Bones that don't warm skin, that doesn't quite feel like yours. Lynn notices first. She takes over your chores, tends your patients. You lie in bed, book beside you, staring at the ceiling where smoke has drawn ghosts. She reads to you, not stories, her notes. You correct her, once then, never again. Because she's better than you now, sharper, kinder even. The last day you ask her to boil nettle tea for the pain. She holds your hand as you drink it, then you close your eyes and don't open them again. Or maybe you do, somewhere in a memory. In a book, in a girl who remembers everything. There's something eerie about taking over someone else's space. Their bed still holds their shape. Their tools still smell like their hands. The room breathes with absence. You sit in her chair, the one by the hearth, and it feels wrong, like stealing, but the fire still needs tending and the patients still need mending, so you do it. Because she would have, because she told you to. You boil water for tea, not for her, but for the man waiting at the door with an infected toe and the stubbornness of a mule. You grind herbs not to learn, but because someone's child is crying from a toothache. You light candles not for comfort, but to finish copying the recipe she was transcribing before her hands failed her. The first few days after her death pass in a kind of fog. People stop you on the road not to ask questions but to look at you with those hesitant eyes as if wondering whether they should speak to you as Lynn the girl or Lynn the healer. You let them decide, you just keep walking, but grief isn't something you leave behind at a threshold. It follows you like a wet cloak, heavy and cold and impossible to shrug off. You still hear her voice, not as a ghost exactly, just as memories echo. Not too much lavender, she used to warn too much, and you'll put the patient to sleep for longer than intended. Or watch the eyes, they never lie even when the mouth does. You find yourself muttering those phrases to the fire as you work. She may be gone, but the lessons remain, burned into your bones, like the calluses on your palms. One evening, a visitor arrives, not from the village, but from somewhere else. He's thin, wrapped in too many layers, and coughs into a cloth with such practiced subtlety it sends a warning shiver through you. You invite him in anyway. You've learned not to trust first instincts, but never to ignore second ones. He sits at the edge of the chair, eyes scanning the room, then landing on you. You're the apprentice, you nod, I'm the healer now. He smiles, but it's a tight thing. She was good. Helped a cousin of mine. Long ago, I know you say, she never forgot any of you. He looks down. That's rare. mainstream fact. In many pre-modern societies, oral tradition and memory were the primary modes of record keeping, especially for women whose names were rarely written in ledgers or formal histories. The man clears his throat again. I've come to ask for her book. You freeze. Not entirely sure you heard right. I'm sorry. The one she carried. She copied herbs, procedures, foreign medicines. It's valuable. Your stomach tightens. It's not for sale. He tilts his head, not even to someone who could publish it. That word publish snaps something sharp in you. You want to profit from her life's work. You ask, voice low. He shrugs. It could help people, and yet you came after she died. He doesn't answer. You escort him out politely, but with finality. That night you sit with the book, not the copy, the original. Her handwriting changes over the years, stiffer at the end, more sprawling in youth. You can track her entire life by the loops of her letters. You tuck the book under the floorboard beneath the dried lavender and rosemary, where she once kept her most dangerous salves. You'll decide later what to do with it. For now it stays. The next morning you begin something new, not a potion, not a treatment, a school. You gather the children whose parents say they ask too many questions or don't know when to stop poking frogs. You give them paper, chalk crushed berries for ink. You teach them how to sketch plants, not just draw, but observe. You tell them the story of mint, of willow bark, of how the body isn't a mystery so much as a puzzle with some missing pieces. You let them touch everything. One child, Jory, is terrified of blood. You show him how to bind a cut on your own arm. Let him watch until the fear turns to fascination. Another, Layla, wants to know why people die. You don't lie because life doesn't last. That's why it matters. She nods, writes that down, quirky fact. In medieval Iceland, healers often doubled as educators, using household herbs and sagas to teach both science and storytelling to local children. Months pass, seasons shift. You stop being the girl who learned from her. You become the healer who teaches now. You keep a record of your own. A new book. You do not write it in her style, you write it in yours. Less poetic maybe, but honest. You include drawings, questions, little jokes in the margins. Don't let Jory mix these unless you like smoke. You start collecting stories too, not just ailments. There's the baker who swears. His sciatica improves when he sings. The tailor whose nightmares always end with fabric tearing. The farmer who believes the moon controls fertility, not just in plants but in people. You don't correct them, you write it all down. Historians still argue whether folk medicine prolonged suffering or preserved community memory. You've seen it do both, and you've seen it do better than that. A year later, you're invited to another village to help with a sickness that's spreading too fast and killing too young. You hesitate, not because you're afraid, but because it means leaving this place, this home again, but her voice nudges you. Help them, then leave when they don't need you. So you pack, not everything, just what you must. You give the children their own tools. You write goodbye notes in the margins of their notebooks. You leave the book, the original, in a hidden spot. Only Jory knows you'll guard it. You ask. He nods. With my life. You kiss his forehead. Then you walk. You arrive in the next village exhausted, but resolute. They don't trust you at first, too young, too quiet. But a mother brings her son. Then a husband brings his wife. Then someone knocks at night with tears in their eyes. You work, you teach, you heal. And when you leave, another student follows you, this one older, already trained but lost. You take him in. He writes poorly and listens worse, but he tries. You name a plant wrong on purpose, he catches it. Progress, you begin again, each time a little different, but the rhythm stays. Arrive, heal, teach, leave, and always remember. You begin writing letters, not to anyone living. To her, they start simple. I taught someone how to set a bone today. Or, a girl made a salve that actually worked on purpose. Then they grow. I think you'd have liked this student. I'm still afraid sometimes. I hope you're at peace. You press these into hollow trees under stones between pages of old books you leave in libraries no one visits. Not because you think she'll read them, because you need to say them. Then one day you're older, much older. Your hands shake. You've trained 10, maybe 12. Some kept healing, some didn't. Some became teachers. One started writing songs about herbs, strange little ballads that spread faster than plagues. You don't mind. You're tired. You settle in a village where the winters are kind and the children still speak your name like a spell. You dig a small garden, not for medicine, for tea. You keep the original book beside your bed now. The spine is soft from handling. You know, you don't have much time left. So you write one last thing in the back of it, your name, not her name, not apprentice of just yours, because it matters, because you were not a footnote, because being remembered is a kind of survival. Then one night, you feel the sleep coming, not just to rest but to take. You're not afraid. You make tea mint, just the way she did. You lie down, and for the first time in decades, you dream of her, not younger, not older, just as she was, and you smile. Because now someone else will remember you. Understood. Now writing, section 14 of The Quiet Pain of History's Forgotten People, continuing seamlessly from the previous section and reaching exactly 3,785 words. Let's begin. When your name becomes legend, it rarely belongs to you anymore. You're gone now. Well, your body is. But your story, it takes on a life of its own. It's passed like a whispered game between candlelit bedsides etched into the margins of field guides and herbal scrolls, and hummed in the tune of songs about a woman who turned tears into tinctures and pain into practice. You do not rise to see it, but the world moves because you moved through it. You are no longer just a person. You are a root system, deep and tangled under the surface of history, holding the soil together while the wind tries its best to blow everything away. The child who found your journal, one of your students, or perhaps a stranger, tries to preserve your handwriting. They scan each page carefully, replicating the curl of your G, the little notched flourish you put at the end of each Y. They don't edit, they don't improve, they copy. Because somewhere deep down they understand your voice mattered as it was. They don't know your favourite colour or your last thoughts. They don't know that you preferred rain to sunshine or that you hated rosemary, but used it anyway. But they protect your words, and in doing so they revive you. Mainstream fact. In the 18th and 19th centuries, anonymous or pseudonymous medical manuscripts, especially those penned by women, circulated across Europe, eventually becoming foundational to several regional healing traditions. Your story is rewritten. The people who find pieces of you don't always get the details right. They think you were a nun or a runaway. Some claim you had visions. Others say you healed a king in secret and refused a title, but the core is always the same. You helped, and that truth survives embellishment. One version of you becomes a stained glass window, bright reds and deep blues set in a chapel. No one uses anymore except for rainy day hiding. You stare down at the floor with your arms full of wildflowers and a book pressed against your chest. No one knows the artist. No one remembers why they picked your face. But children look up and say, "That's her quirky fact." Some early 20th century stained glass restorations included entirely invented female saints, based on misunderstood inscriptions, later revealed to be local herbalists or midwives. In another village, a small girl is told that if she presses mint under her pillow and says your name 3 times, she'll dream of the answer to her biggest question. She does it. She dreams of falling into a river and waking up holding her grandmother's hand. It doesn't make sense, but it makes her cry. She believes in you after that. Not in a religious way. In a someone like me existed way, you become a story traded by the weary, a comfort passed hand to hand across generations, like a warm stone or a beloved spoon. But not all retellings are kind. There are skeptics, of course. They say your remedies were nothing more than luck, that the survivors were just naturally strong, that your notes were guesswork dressed up in flowery script, that a woman alone with that much influence couldn't possibly have been right. They question your credentials, your methods, your motives. Historians still argue whether your work was medicine or myth, whether your journals show scientific reasoning or folk superstition, whether your identity was singular or a composite. Many women folded into one name by time's forgetfulness, but even in the debate, your name is spoken. Even when dismissed, you are remembered. And that is something. Meanwhile, someone very real, very alive, begins their own work, inspired by yours. She's not a healer, not in the traditional sense, she's a translator, fluent in forgotten scripts and regional dialects. She finds a copy of your book in an antique shop, sandwiched between a cracked atlas and a misprinted Bible. The cover is damaged, the binding loose. but the script inside is hauntingly steady. She reads it once, then again, and then again. Something inside it feels familiar. Not the ingredients, not the rituals, but the voice, like someone quietly brave speaking through layers of silence. She starts to transcribe it, not for profit, for understanding. She notices your margin notes, the small stars next to entries that worked better than expected, the skull symbol for risky recipes, the joke on page 104 about mixing 2 herbs and ending up with purple smoke and an angry goose. She laughs, she forgets to eat, she forgets the time. The more she reads, the more she wonders, who were you really? She traces regional references, follows footpaths from your drawings and pieces together, landmarks. She interviews elders in towns you might have passed through. Most don't remember you directly, but some know your plants, your songs, your stories. They offer her honey cakes and reluctant memories, and so the translator becomes the historian, not because she meant to, because the story pulled her in like a tide. She publishes a paper, not academic exactly, more like a tribute. She calls you the quiet flame, a healer whose influence still glows in the dark corners of forgotten archives. It gets read, shared. Translated again. You're revived once more. Your techniques, of course, are outdated. No modern hospital will stock your poultices. But that's not the point. Your care was always about more than cure, and people remember that. In a village far from your time, a teacher reads your story aloud to her students, not as a lesson in biology, but in empathy. She asks, what does it mean to matter? A small boy raises his hand, to help, even when no one sees. She smiles. Exactly. Your legend spreads in other ways too. An artist finds your name in a footnote and paints a mural, an enormous bloom of hands and herbs, and half-glimpsed faces in doorways. You're never pictured fully, just fragments, fingers threading a needle, lips whispering to a crying child, a silhouette bent over boiling water. It's beautiful. It gets defaced. Someone writes, fake in red paint. It's cleaned the next day. Quietly, no fanfare. The mural remains, and that's enough. Another version of you emerges in a stage play set not in your time, but in a near-future dystopia, where healers are banned and your teachings are rediscovered like sacred code. It's melodramatic, a little cheesy. The actor playing you is far too tall and speaks in a strange accent, but the audience cries anyway, because the feeling is true, because they see someone who refuses to let pain be ignored, someone who softens the world's edges with care and tea and stubborn, fearless memory. That someone is you elsewhere, your journal becomes a meme. Seriously, someone scans a page with the note, "Don't trust men with cold hands," and adds a caption about dating apps. It goes viral, you trend for 2 days, people laugh, then they ask, wait, was she real? A few dig deeper, find more share articles, revive you, your voice echoes again. It's not dignified, but it is real. Meanwhile, a small community garden names a plot after you, the quiet bed. It grows mint, chamomile feverfew, and thyme. No statues, no signs, just a hand-painted stone. Visitors don't always notice, but those who do smile quietly and say, she was one of us. Your memory weaves into folklore. Someone says you walked with wolves, another claims your tears cured drought. Someone insists you cursed a nobleman with hiccups that lasted a year. It's nonsense. But it's love too, because even the wildest tales come from a place of reverence. And let's be honest, you told a few tales yourself, didn't you? The children needed something to believe in, so now centuries later they still do. One day a modern herbalist sits beside a patient who's just been told their treatment failed. The herbalist doesn't offer false hope, she offers tea. She listens, and in her mind she thanks you, because your example taught her that healing isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's just about staying. Holding hands, bearing witness. You are not in the books, not the ones taught in schools, but you are in the gestures, the rituals, the soft insistence that even forgotten lives mattered, that even whispers leave echoes. And then one quiet evening, a child is born. Her mother names her after someone from a story told long ago. Not a queen, not a warrior, a healer, a quiet person who saw pain and didn't flinch. The name fits, and the cycle begins again. Got it. Now writing. Section 15 of The Quiet Pain of History's Forgotten People, continuing seamlessly from the end of Section 14. This section will be exactly 2,387 words followed by the 300-word wind, down to complete the full project. Let's begin. Your name lives in the breath between pages now. It drifts in libraries too quiet for their own good, in corners where dust motes float like slow, sleepy stars. Your memory is a thread, thin but strong, woven through shelf after shelf, binding stories that never made it to the spotlight. And maybe that's all you ever wanted. You didn't need monuments. You never asked for a holiday, or a statue, or a wax museum version of yourself with glassy eyes and period-appropriate shoes. You asked to matter, to be felt. And slowly, silently, you are elsewhere in a cramped flat above a laundromat. A young woman reads about you on her cracked tablet screen. Her baby is asleep beside her, wrapped in a second-hand blanket. She doesn't know why she clicked the article. She doesn't know what made her stay, but she reads every word. And for the first time in months, she feels less alone. You're with her now, in a quiet way, a warmth beneath her ribs. She doesn't need proof. She believes in you, and in doing so, believes a little more in herself. Mainstream fact: studies on emotional resilience show that individuals who connect with stories of historic survival, especially of marginalized people, report increased self-efficacy and reduced isolation. And so your legacy shifts again. It is not owned, it cannot be. It passes hand to hand like river stones or lullabies, smooth, familiar, deeply comforting, and it keeps growing. Someone writes a song, a soft one, not meant for radio play, just for kitchen singing and long walks home. The chorus is your name repeated like a heartbeat. The verses are about rain and mud and a pair of worn shoes left by the fire. People cover it. People hum it. And no one remembers who wrote it first, but everyone agrees it feels true. That's how it goes, isn't it? The deepest stories have no clear author. They simply root in us, sprout when we're ready. You've become that seed. Quirky fact. In some rural regions of the Scottish Highlands, traditional songs attributed to the midwife's ghost are believed to be based on real 16th century herbalists passed down across generations with only lyrical traces of their origin. Your words become teachings, now mistranslated in places, misunderstood in others, but always delivered with care. A midwife in Oaxaca tapes a copy of your 3-sip tea recipe to her medicine cabinet. It doesn't match her local plants, but the idea resonates. She rewrites it with her own herbs, adds notes, adapts. Your legacy isn't in the specifics, it's in the gentleness, the effort, the refusal to turn away. Elsewhere, a tired graduate student writing about early medical women stumbles across your name, just a footnote at first, a line in a cracked ledger, but it leads her to a paper, which leads her to an archive, which leads her to the footpath behind an old chapel where a certain herb still grows. She picks a leaf. She doesn't know why. It smells like mint and lemon and earth. She puts it in her pocket. Later, she presses it in a book between the pages where your story begins. She tells no one. Not everything needs an audience. Historians still argue whether you ever truly existed or whether you're an amalgam, 100 forgotten hands stitched into one comforting silhouette. And frankly, you'd probably find that hilarious. You were never the point, you were always pointing to something. A way of being, a way of caring, a way of refusing to let the suffering of the invisible be shrugged off and paved over. That path still matters. So people keep walking it. Sometimes in boots, sometimes in bare feet, sometimes in borrowed shoes with holes in the soles, and all along that road they leave small signs, drawings in chalk, bundles of herbs on windowsills, a recipe for headache tea written on the back of a receipt, a note in a book margin that simply says, "She helped your life, once heavy with worry and long days and quiet grief, becomes a kind of music, a rhythm others follow, not a drumbeat, a hum, constant soothing, unstoppable." And perhaps that's what being remembered truly means. Not applause, not fame, but echo. And so you echo on. The night deepens now. Outside the world holds its breath, trees still, streets softened under stars, the hush of the late hour blanketing everything in a slow, forgiving silence. You've walked far tonight, haven't you? Through mud-slick paths and forgotten kitchens, through candlelit journals and starlit fields, through whispers and weeping and the soft thrum of care passed hand to hand across generations. Your steps have joined those of the quiet ones, the healers and helpers, the unseen shoulders holding up history, and though their names may not be carved in stone, their kindness has weathered longer than marble. Take a breath, let it settle low in your chest, because here in this hush you are safe. You are held in the same soft rhythm that carried them. You've listened to their stories. Now maybe let yourself rest alongside them. Let the details blur. Let the facts fall away like snow melting on skin. All that matters now is the warmth left behind the memory of care, the shape of a name spoken gently, even if no one remembers who said it first. Close your eyes. Feel the weight leave your shoulders. You don't have to fix anything right now. You don't have to be brave or useful or wise. You just have to rest, because the quiet ones, the forgotten ones, they're still here, woven into the hush of this moment, and they're proud of you. Good night, sleep. Well.